All right, guys, welcome back to the Self Mastery Podcast. I'm your host and self mastery coach, Ricky Gorsi. In today's episode, I want to talk about the quote, work like a lion, not like a cow. Okay, so this is a really good quote. It's really powerful, and I really, really like it. So, if you think about lions and cows, right, you think about what a cow does on a daily basis, and you think about what a lion does. They're very different, aren't they? The way they sort of like eat and, quote unquote, hunt is very different. A cow just literally spends all day grazing, just right. Like he doesn't really have like any like sprints of directed energy. He's just constantly just at a low performance rate. He's just grazing all day. Just he's sort of always in the middle of like rest and work. He's never really resting and he's never really working. He's sort of just in this middle ground. Now, a lion, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. Lions sleep something like 18 hours a day, right? Like they are, when they're up, they're fucking up and they are hunting and they are running after their prey and they are aggressive like machines. Now, when we work, right, it's very similar. We should have the attitude of a lion. We should have the approach of a lion of like, not necessarily the ratio of like rest to work, but in the sense of like aggressive sprints, right? Like when you're working, you are working. Don't do anything else. Don't think about, relaxing. Don't think about giving it, 60% fucking work as hard as you can for a sprint, for a set period of time. That is when you hunt. And then afterwards, when you're not working, literally rest, completely rest. Don't worry about anything else. Don't think about work. Don't worry about work when you're resting. And this formula might sound like obvious, but I can tell you from personal experience and also from all the men in my community and all the men that I've worked with on a one-on-one basis as well, a lot of men have a issue in sort of like differentiating work time from relaxing time. When they're working, they're not really all there. They're not giving it their all because they haven't had adequate rest. Because when they rest, they feel guilty for resting and they feel like they should be working. So a lot of men are sort of in this perpetual middle state of like, I'm sort of working, I'm sort of not working. And we're sort of just like giving 60%, you know what I mean? Like you're not giving your all because you don't have your all to give because you haven't actually rested. But yeah, it's such a massive thing. We should all really take on the like the attitude of a lion in terms of how we approach our work. Right? They sleep, they conserve their energy, and then they explode into intense and focused action. That's how we should be. Like you would be insanely surprised at how much you can get done if you just set a period of time where there's no distractions, where you have a set plan like made before, the night before or the day before, and you just fucking attack. You can get so much done. When I first started like creating an actual strong work structure for myself, I was like, I'm baffled at what I can get done in literally 4 hours. Like what I can do in a 4 hour like work sprint is honestly like 5 times more than I can do over a few days of just like half working, but you're working for the whole day. It's always better to have like an intense work sprints that are just solely directed on work compared to just like always kind of working. You know what I mean? You don't want to be like the cow. You don't want to always be grazing. You want to be like the lion. You rest and then you hunt aggressively, focused and intense. It's intense work sprints. You shouldn't just be grazing all day, just sort of work. Like you don't want that. It doesn't lead to anything. You know what actually it does lead to? It leads to wasted time and a lack of productivity. Like if you've got work you need to do, get it done. Don't fucking half do it. Don't sort of do it. Don't procrastinate in it. Just get the fucking work done and then you can relax, right? But if you have this attitude of like, oh, yeah, I'm sort of doing it. There's so much to do. So I'm just going to, like, just play it out and see how much I can get done. And, it's probably going to take all day. No, bro. Things take as much time as you give them. That's an old law, right? If you give yourself, let's say you're building a website for your business. If you give yourself 4 hours to build the website, it'll take 4 hours. If you give yourself 4 weeks, it'll take 4 weeks. Things like tasks expand to the time you allocate to them. And so if you have this attitude of the cow, which is like always grazing, you say to yourself you're a hard worker because you're always working, but it's like, are you actually hunting or are you grazing? Like, if you really analyze your work, are you really like going fucking hard, or are you just like, sort of working, giving it like 40, 60%? Because I can almost fucking guarantee you a lot of people listening to this podcast, they would have more in the tank. And I'm not saying you have to work every hour of every day. I'm actually implying the opposite. I'm implying you to work less hours in the day, but the hours you do work are intense. They're focused. It's like, honestly, like a projection of aggression almost, like the attitude you have to it. Like, you're attacking your goals, you're attacking the to-do list, you're attacking the things you need to conquer. It's not like, I'm sort of doing, I'm just working, I'm working all day today. It's like, you're not working, you're grazing, bro. You're slowly going through things. It's like attack and then rest, attack and then rest, attack and then rest. And you can really, like, not only going to have more hours in the day, but you're going to have more energy, because when you have adequate rest, you can work extremely intense and do these like intense work sprints, and then rest again, and then come back, and then rest again, and then come back, right? And the rest periods don't have to be massive. They can literally be like a 30-minute walk or an hour lunch break or whatever. And then you're back fresh, ready to go again. From my personal experience and from my clients, I'm telling you, this method works significantly better than the like grazing method of like, yeah, we're working all day, but just do what you could do at whatever pace you want. It's like, no, that's a sure way to waste time, and it's a sure way to operate on a super low level of productivity. You want to be like the lion. You want to, attack. All right, now when you like think about it like this: when you work, you're on, right? Like, in your work, you want to give your complete presence and attention to your work. You want to attack your work. You don't want to have this half mentality of like, yeah, I'm here, but I'm thinking about what I'm going to do after work. And it's like, no, bro, you're working. Give every fiber of your being to your work. That way you can be as productive as possible. That way you can smash out the work. And then when you're in a period of rest, you can then actually rest and think about all the other things. And also, when you rest, you're off. Like, this is something I've personally struggled with in the past. Just like allowing myself to rest, right? Like, if you're a person who's like productive and you're all about like being super productive and getting things done, this, you've probably experienced like the guilt from resting. Like, you feel like, oh, you should always be doing something. And I experienced that a lot, like in the past, and even like to this day, sometimes it comes up. And I just got to like remind myself and reassure myself that, hey, like when you're working, you work fucking hard. So you deserve to have this rest. And without this rest, you can't work as hard as you do. So it's a little bit of a paradox in a sense, right? You need to become okay with resting in order to actually work hard, because without that rest, you wouldn't be able to work at the capacity that you do. So, like, guilt free, like, don't beat yourself up for resting. It's absolutely necessary, right? Use the metaphor of like the gym. When you're building muscle, right? You don't build muscle in the gym. You tear muscle fibers in the gym. You build muscle when you're resting at home, when you're sleeping. Same thing with like business and just general productivity. Like, yeah, you're getting things done when you're working, but in order to have that capacity to work, you need to allocate the rest. And don't beat yourself up over the rest. Like, I've done that in the years, and doesn't lead to anything good. Like, all it leads to, if I'm being completely honest, is like fake productivity. I literally used to, when I was younger, a partner of mine at the time pulled me up on it and sort of like shed a bit of awareness on it. I would used to just always sit at my desk, like always sitting at my desk. And she would always say, like, what are you doing? Why are you always at your desk? I'm like, I'm working. That's what I always said to her. I'm working. And she's like, you're actually not though. She's like, you're not actually doing anything. She's like, I've been watching you. You're just on like social media and stuff. And I was like, oh shit. I said, it's like a false feeling of productivity, right? Like, I'm here, I'm working, but it's like, I'm not actually working. I'm not actually ticking boxes. I'm not actually getting closer to what I want to do. I'm just grazing, right? Like a fucking cow. I wasn't operating like a lion. I wasn't like resting and then attacking the goals and then resting and then attacking. I was literally grazing all the time. And you just waste time. Like, you're in this state of work, so you've got like a low level of like stress, but you're not actually getting near as much done if you just took on the mentality of like the lion. All right, let's talk about too the sort of like truth that you're not meant to always be working, right? I know there's a bit of a culture of like, it's like, what is it, like the hustle culture. And I don't get me wrong, I love fucking grinding, I love working, I love all that sort of stuff. But in my development over the years, I have made room for rest, and I've made room to be like, hey, you know what? I've worked like I used to genuinely. You can, I don't know if you'll know people I know, but I've told people that I'm close with how I've struggled with in the past. Not like getting myself to work. Getting myself to work is it's my natural default. Like it's been habitualized in me now to just like, yeah, wake up working. That's the thing we do. More so, what I struggled with in the past was like getting myself to just take a day off. Like because what I do, I'm so passionate about. It was hard, man, to take it out because I'm like, I just want to work, bro. I want to. This my life's work. You know what I mean? It's my purpose. That's what I want to do. But if you don't allow yourself adequate rest and if you don't allow yourself a break, you can't actually show up at your full potential. Like you're going to show up, yeah, but it's not going to be at your full capacity. It's going to be a lesser version of you because you're always showing up every single day. You're not giving yourself any break, any rest. You're actually not even giving yourself any time to miss your work either. Like that's a big topic in and of itself, right? Like there's a quote, right? Distance apart makes the heart grow fonder. It's like a relationship quote, but it works in the same way for business. Like if you truly love your work and you are genuinely on purpose and you're doing your life's task, when you give yourself a break, you might think, oh, I'm going to break my like flow and I'm going to get used to being like quote unquote lazy. But really, it's the opposite. Like if you really love what you do, you give yourself a break. Your passion builds up in the background, and you actually want to get back to work. And once you're back in the work scene, you're like, fuck yeah, let's smash it. Like you're keen. You missed it. You know what I mean? Because your purpose drives you. But if you're always working and you're always like 12 hours a day and you're just, boom, it's every minute of every day you're working. There's no breaks and there's no alone time and there's no anything outside of the business or your job, you don't ever have time to miss it, and so you're always caught up in this cycle. And you actually, what tends to happen over a long period of time is you begin to resent your work, and you begin to fucking hate it. And if you're doing something which is literally like an expression of your truth and an expression of your passion, the last thing you want to do is start to hate your work because all the creative energy, all your power, all your sort of like ability to build something amazing comes from that passion. It comes from that genuine desire to see something manifest in the world that you're so passionate about. And a really good way to kill that is to overindulge in it, right? They always say like, um, too much of anything is bad for us, right? And I believe that to be true. Like even your purpose, you engage in your purpose too much, right? Like I'm talking, definitely engage in it like a lot because it's your purpose, but to the point where like you're not even allowing yourself to like go hang out with mates every now and then. It's like, bro, you're going to start to resent the purpose because you're eventually going to realize like, hey, I have given this everything. And while that's good and there's seasons for that, you're going to be like, what am I working for? Like you want to work like a fucking lion. Like really, when you're working, you work. When you're resting, you rest. And just allow yourself to rest. I know I've said that, but man, it's so important. Like just allow yourself to rest. Don't feel guilty about it. Don't feel like you're wasting fucking time because you're not. You're recharging. You want to work in aggressive sprints. And in order to do that, in order to work like an absolute fucking weapon when you're working, you need to give yourself adequate rest. So, this is my little take for the day. I really like this quote. It came up on a call the other day in the Self Mastery Society community call. We had one of the lads talking about how they feel guilty when they're not working, and I said, man, I understand, but like you need to allow yourself rest, right? Without rest, you're literally going to lead to burnout. And burnout's a very real thing. Some people say burnout's not real. It absolutely is real. Like I've genuinely worked periods like months where I haven't allowed myself any rest. And it's just like literally eyes open to eyes shut, work on the business. Eyes open to eyes shut, work on the business. Boom, boom, boom. And you just fucking you burn out, you lose yourself, you disconnect from who you are, and like, yeah, it's not a good place to be. And I was just talking to this guy in the community, and I said, man, when you rest, allow yourself to rest. Don't feel shit about it. And he was telling me here that sometimes he feels shame, right? Shame around not working because he has these expectations on himself, and all these other people have these expectations. And I was like, bro, I understand that probably more than anyone. I understand the expectations and the shame that can come from that. I said, but if you don't allow yourself to rest, you can't show up as the man you need to be to get the things done that you need to do. And he said, fuck, man, that's so true. And we're talking, and then we're just talking about like, there's like a pendulum of, if you imagine like a pendulum, right? Like a thing that swings from side to side. If you go too far in either side, you tend to like rebel against the structure. So for example, if you work, a month straight, 15, 14-hour days, and you think nothing's going to come of that, you're naturally going to want to rebel against that, right? That's why you see like businessmen and shit going like massive benders, coke, like crazy fucking coke benders, and they feel the need to engage in shit like prostitutes and all this other shit because they're rebelling against their own structure. They're going way too hard on the business sense, and then they need to rebel and feel like this sense of relief, right? So it's like structure, and then it's like it builds up to the point where it's like almost unbearable, and then it's like, okay, boom, a massive release of like, you could call it like play, but like play in and of itself isn't a bad thing, or play or rest, whatever word you want to use. But it becomes a bit of a bad thing when you deprive yourself of it for so long, and then you rebound, and then you're just like you're oscillating from one side of the pendulum to the other, from one extreme to the other. Not really the ideal place to be if your goal is sustainability and longevity. You sort of want to find the middle way, right? You want to live a life in which you're working a set amount and you're also resting and playing a set amount too. Like I don't know. My philosophy has always been like, you want to sort of create a life where you don't need these big like releases of like, oh my God, I needed this. It's like, why didn't you incorporate this in little amounts throughout your like week or throughout your month, right? And because if you do that, you don't need these massive releases, and you can stay away from the fucking extremes instead of going to the extreme of like absolute workaholic, abandon all his friends, like, workaholic, abandon all his friends, and neglect his health, all this sort of like extremities, and then rebounding into the other side of like absolute self-destruction, drugs, fucking hookers, just absolute bullshit, which then he feels all the shame and he feels like shit and he feels like he's not being productive. So then he goes back to the other side, and then the cycle repeats itself. Instead of doing that and just getting caught in that perpetual cycle, you can just create the middle way, find the middle way, and you can work, a solid amount, and then you can incorporate a bit of play and a bit of rest, and then you can work, and you can just continue that. And that's a really healthy way to approach work. And, a lot of guys and women too, but a lot of guys are very much so like workaholics. And I'm not saying it's the worst thing on earth to be really driven for work. Like, I'm an extremely driven individual myself. I'm extremely ambitious, driven, got a really strong work ethic. But sometimes that work ethic can actually work against you, because if you go too far into the work, you're going to rebel against your own systems, right? So just to summarize this, work like a lion, not like a cow. You don't want to be grazing. You don't want to sort of be the sort of guy who's just like always working, but at like a lower productivity rate. You want to do these aggressive sprints of work, whether it be like, you wake up at 4 a.m., you work for 4 hours on the business, solid work, and then you go and get breakfast with your partner or with your mates, and you hit the gym, and then you come back and you might do another 4-hour work period, right? Like, find that balance, work like a lion, have those aggressive sprints, and stay away from the extremes. Like, these aggressive sprints, they're awesome. They're really powerful. They work really well, but they need to be supplemented with rest, and they need to be supplemented with play, because if you spend too much time in the sprint section, in the sprint periods, you tend to want to rebel against your own systems. It's just something I've experienced in my experience and seen a lot in a lot of the guys that I work with, is if you push a guy too much, like, let's say, for example, there's a guy who works 14-hour days for a month straight. Naturally, building up within him, he's going to start to resent his work, and he's going to want to start to rebel against it. At this point in time, I don't know the psychological term for that. I will be looking that up, but I just know it's something that happens, and it reoccurs in most people that I've spoken to. And vice versa. If you go too far on the play side, you want to rebel against the lack of structure, and so you incorporate a ton of structure. So to summarize, work like a lion, not like a cow. Don't graze, attack like intensely for set periods of time, but also incorporate periods of rest. And when those periods of rest are in play and in motion, actually rest, and don't feel guilty for it. it's necessary for you to show up like an absolute weapon when it's time to work. Hope you guys got value from this podcast episode. If you are interested in working with me one-on-one or joining my men's self-development community, the Self Mastery Society, feel free to reach out to me on my Instagram, which is just my name, Ricky Gauci, RICKY space GAUCI. Thank you guys. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.